All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursday and Get Paid. I'm Kimberly. This is Deb. And
Hi.
we're really happy to be with you today. We have important conversations. Every week is important, but I know that there's so much talk about what's going to happen. Our offices are going back. If you're a leader and you're having to make that decision, there's a lot to consider. There are so many moving pieces. And every time I talk to a client, they're like, okay, so what does that mean? We're talking about hybrid, but people who have been 100% remote, and we'll talk about what remote means later, have been really like, hey, I'm doing my job quite well without going back to work. What does that mean? So how do you handle those complicated conversations? And what are the moving pieces that you have to consider, especially as a leader and a business owner, when you're making these decisions to reopen the workplace? And so, before the pandemic, we all know conventional wisdom is like you get so much more done when everyone's in the office and you can collaborate, and it's so much more productive and you build the culture of the company. But now we are more than a year out. So what does all of that conventional wisdom really mean? Let me share some metrics with you from some recent reporting from McKinsey, Lean In, and a few other companies. So we looked at April, 62%, and that's this April. So that means that we have been in this situation for over a year. 62% of employed Americans worked at home. They have been at home since the crisis started, and they were still at home. So that's compared to 25% a couple of years ago. And I know I've been in this business for a long time. There's been so much conversation about, can I just do work from home on Fridays? What's this as a perk, and so you compare 25% a couple of years ago to 62% in April, right? And people were surprised. They were totally surprised at how productive they could be, or how quickly technology supported that. Then we move forward, and in another report from McKinsey, 80% of people questioned that they enjoy working from home. 80%. And we've done shows about, women are overtaxed. What does this mean? People are burnt out, but yet in this recent research, 80% of people questioned said that they loved it. 41% say that they are more productive, and 28% say that they're just as productive. So if we take all of that in consideration, and we know we have to do the deep dive to see who are those people who are answering the questions, and what industries do they work in, and what does their, what does their personal life look like? It just brings us to where we are today.
Yep.
Hands up. Like, what does this look like, and how can we do it effectively?
Yeah, absolutely. And all those are great points. And it is a very complex and complicated subject, because people think immediately, we've been doing this. We've already been working remotely, and we just have to do it differently or do it in a hybrid way. But really, it's much more complicated than that. And, the first thing I think you have to do is really dig deep into your employee population and find out what's going on. Because what we did last year was react to an emergency situation and bring everything home. And then what happened from there has completely shifted what's going to happen in the future. And so when you start to ask employees, you're going to hear different things. You're going to hear that there are people who want to continue to do what they have been doing, which is working from home. There are going to be people who want to come back to the office 100%. There are people who are going to want to do some sort of hybrid, but that hybrid could look different. Like, it could be, I want to be in the office 1 week and home 1 week. Or it could be they want to be in the office 2 days a week, every week, or it could look a lot of different ways. There's also the idea, somebody was talking yesterday, I happened to be sitting in on a session with a remote work expert. there's also people who have shifted their time. So while working from home with perhaps having children there, maybe they work 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then they're there to help their kids with their homework, or they do something else. So they sort of shifted what the normal quote 9 to 5 is. Some people have started doing work and break for a variety of reasons. It could be for childcare, it could be for elder care, it could be for exercise reasons or psychological health, just taking care of themselves. They still work the same amount of hours, but they do it very differently. So I think it's very important to understand that what we did last year was an emergency reaction, and really working remotely could be a lot of different things, and we have to really, really think it through. And I think what you and I have discussed, which is kind of my next question to you, is CEOs have to ask themselves, once they ask their employees, why are we coming back and what are we coming back to do? Right. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an incredible question, right? And asking why is so important in everything that we do. We have to know the why. If we don't start with the why, you never really develop a plan or a strategy or understanding of the purpose. And if you don't have the purpose, how do you bring people toward it? So I think that as you are kind of doing some self
reflection,
I guess, yeah, some reflection, but also some deep dives into your business or what your needs are. You need to kind of ask, why are we asking them to come back? And are we bringing people back to work just because that's what we've done? Or is this an opportunity to really look at the roles that make our business what it is and our teams what they are and reclassify? Is that an opportunity, right? So if we look at all the roles that it takes to do our business, I think you could look at it and look at it beyond a perk, because I think that people have gotten to the place now in the discussion around going back to work that, oh, well, I should be able to do this because, it would be a great perk. Or I could have 3 days and be in the office 2 days because it'd be a great perk. But let's look beyond the perk. Let's look at the role, right? What does that look like? So it could be maybe there's something that you've learned over the last year plus that there is the possibility to have a role that is 100% remote, right? You can get everything done in a remote setting. Great. That's net positive for everyone if they're in that role and they want. Plus, it gives you the opportunity to find talent that you might not otherwise find because they wouldn't be willing to move. 2, is there a role that is really hybrid, right? And what does that mean? That you could work part of the time in a location or a headquarters, and you could do some of it at work. That's at home. That's kind of net neutral. Then there's the hybrid remote by exception, which is kind of where we were, right? It's not ideal. But if it was the best absolute candidate and they couldn't relocate, would you consider that? And then there's the on-site, right? Every job can't necessarily be remote. You could consider, we do have these jobs that are absolutely necessary on-site. And so those are the things that you need to consider when you're saying, oh, we're going to open the doors and people need to come back. And we're going to work it out. It's going to be hybrid. Well, think about it. Who really needs to be there? So I think that's something that's really important when you're thinking about why should we come back? And then when we go back, what's going to be different?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, and things have to be different. I think just by virtue of the fact that the way offices are set up, you can't have you're not likely going to be able to bring 100% of the people back 100% of the time anyway, just because of restrictions that are going to continue to exist. But also right now, and again, I've been reading about this and listening to different experts on the subject, is that employers are not going to spend, unless you were already about to renovate or already had a huge budget to create a new office, and the timing just happens to be that you can now create it with this whole new mindset. if you don't have that kind of money, employers are not going to just start renovating for no reason. They're just going to figure out how to work with what they have. And so one of the experts I was listening to yesterday by chance happened to talk about the idea. I was thinking about the idea myself about innovating. Like if one of the business reasons to be back in the office is to create an environment of innovation, then maybe you start having people back for innovation purposes, like innovation days. And that's the reason we're back. And then we can go back and do our work in other places. But his thought process, the person I was listening to, was that if you had a little bit of money and you could invest it into your physical location at the office, that he said, don't have offices or defined desks anymore. Let people hotel as they come and go, and keep those spaces neat and clean. And then use your money to create collaboration spaces, big open spaces with whiteboards and cameras and screens, so that when people are there, they can be together, but still include the people who are potentially not there that day. And let that be the focus of the office, instead of offices and cubicles and defined spaces for specific people. So I think that's one thing that can be different. What do you think?
Well, I agree with that. I read an article recently that, these collaboration spaces are super important. And then also, the places like WeWork or flex spaces, there's their opportunity for more partnerships there, right? Where you can then use all of the technology and have people like they're right in the room, but you're not investing in these overhauls, because you're right. We talk about get paid and how anything that you're doing from a business perspective, you want to, it has to be a positive effect on the bottom line, right? You don't want to blow up your profit because you just have to do these changes just so you can say, I'm ready for something that you might, if you take a little more time to look into it, you might not have to. The other thing I think about when I talk about what will be different is, are we reimagining, or can we reconstruct how work gets done? I mean, you and I were talking, and I was saying, why not create a relay situation? They're like a tag team, where we can only have so many people in the office at one time, but instead of judging people on their individual contribution, really create what should be actually real teamwork, right? And there are some companies, I think, or industries, IT, some others, where it is all about the teamwork. When you think about lab work or
nursing. Even
right. Exactly. Right. Like when you're finished your shift, the next person hands over and here's what's going on with this patient. And we want, why couldn't we create those types of teamwork scenarios where the work continues to get done, but it's done differently? So just thinking, a little outside of the box of how can we influence positively what's going to be a sticky situation, I think, for a minute. It's not going to be smooth, and people are going to have to be patient and understand that it's kind of trial and error. We've never been there before.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's really important. So, I
love that. I think the idea of really innovating, not just going back to what was in a different way, because it's stale. Just like your offices will be when you get back there. Nothing's been happening. Things have just been stale. And now it's an opportunity to say, okay, let's not try to just squeeze what we were doing back into a hybrid situation or whatever our situation is going to be. Let's really innovate. So, this is as we know, a complicated and complex question, and it's not an easy one. But what would you say for today? What's the bottom line?
So I love speaking up the power of 3, but today I'm going to give you 4. 4 things that I think you should consider if you are a leader, or if your company is, making the plans now to open it up and bring people back. Number 1, we know, is safety. Number 1 is the safety of your employees. So that's number 1 consideration. Number 2, work satisfaction and enjoyment. you do want people to have some satisfaction about what they do every day, because in the end, even if they flex their hours, we work hard. No question there. Collaboration. So to your point earlier, is it more important to have collaboration space so we can be innovative, or just to bring people back, right? Collaboration and innovation is what's going to move us forward in business. And then overall, that should be wrapped up in this beautiful bow of not forgetting the goals and requirements for your business. Like that's the bottom line. You make decisions for the people to make sure that they're able to deliver on the goals of the business.
Yep, absolutely. Yep, that sums it up, and we could go on, and I think this week we've just covered kind of the employer's perspective, right, on how to come back, and I think next week we've decided we're going to explore, what do employees have to do with it? What's your job as an employee of a company in understanding how this is going to work? Because it takes all of us, and to your point, I mean, the team approach is going to be critical regardless. And so what is the employee's obligations to make this work as well? So I'm excited to continue the conversation.
Yeah, I think we're going to be talking about this a lot, and that's great. And I hope people enjoyed what we had to say, and that if you have questions or comments, or you are in the throes of this, please reach out to us. This is, like I said, it's complicated, and we have to look at every possible way of getting back safely. So Thank you guys for joining us today. We'll see you next week. LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, and Facebook Live, 11 o'clock on Thursdays. Get paid.
Get paid.